maybe three dynasties will be a good one. And so all you have to do is keep them pampered with your taxes and his army and so on. But if you have a whole government with layers of bureaucracy, now you've got thousands of them to keep happy with your tax money. And it's a true statement. I mean, in other words, if people want government at all, and they never stop to even think about that part of it, if they really want government at all, what kind do you want? Because technically, it's always the same as just degrees of taxation and corruption, that's all. Because it's the same types who go in for government, or kings, or whatever, at the beginning at least, for kings. But I've talked about the omnibus bills, and many people on the Patriot radio stations have been listening to this stuff for years and years and years, but omnibus bills, where they've crammed through hundreds and maybe thousands of laws in one big foul swoop. And 10,000 pages, 20,000 pages, no politician even makes an attempt to look through it. And yet they'll vote on it because their party leader says so. That's the beauty of having parties. You do what the boss man says, because you want to get up the ladder too, closer to the boss man, and maybe even become the boss man. Very simple, isn't it? That's how the logic goes. So you put in your man at the top, and all the trained seals will sit there on their pedestals and clap for the boss man. That's what it's all about, and payoffs, and individual rewards. A long time ago, Karl Marx talked about the amalgamation of Europe into a trading bloc, and then to have a government that would be subservient to a world government. That would be followed, he said, by a United States of America. That's Canada, the US, and Mexico, which also will have to go through eventually getting a new parliament as well, and being subservient to the world government. And it's all being set up, really. We're all in it now. And you hear all this stuff about the IMF, International Monetary Fund, part of the UN, being brought up to its rightful place as sort of economic dictator over the world. And the World Bank. But it's all run by the same bankers who financed all the other nations, and pretty well were the central banks, or are, in fact, of all the nations. So nothing will change except their ability to have a world army and a world police force to grab a peasant anywhere across the planet for taxation. That's really what it's about. And the global government will have the only army able to go after you and do that. It's more efficient than having to go door to door and find you, or go between countries and different laws and constitutions to get someone extradited. They've pretty well overcome that now, under the guise of terrorism. It's all one agenda, you see. And here's a typical example of the corruption. This is from the Mail Online, 31st of March 2009. It's about Caroline Flint, and they give you a nice picture of this very trendy, fashionable woman who obviously, at least fashion-wise, revels in the ability to get the best of clothing across Europe. So the government minister responsible for the revived EU constitution, they they're trying to give them this constitution for the whole of Europe. And Ireland really puts the spokes in the wheel out by saying no. So it's a revised one. In other words, it's the same one again, only revamped. This is the minister, the politician who's responsible for this. This is her department. It says she made an astonishing gaffe by admitting she'd never read it. Well, what's new about that? But doesn't that tell you? You see, they're all employed by a higher authority, and they do what they're told. A higher authority. They don't represent the people. They don't even listen to the people. They don't even read what's in the bills. This is the top minister for the EU constitution, admitting she made a gaffe, a blunder, by admitting she'd never read it. Europe Minister Caroline Flint admitted she'd only been briefed on parts of a document that surrenders a raft of British powers to Brussels. The left wing has refused to give British voters a referendum on the Lisbon Treaty on the grounds that it is substantially different to the dumped constitution. You see, Sarkozy talked about that as well. He doesn't believe in giving the people the vote. The people of Europe the vote. They shouldn't get the vote, apparently, under this wonderful democracy. I should be left to the politicians to vote amongst themselves. This is tyranny. The only thing that they don't tell you in this article here is you're living under tyranny. You're supposed to come to that conclusion yourself and ask questions. But we do. We expect them to tell us what to worry about. The media is supposed to tell us what to think about, what to worry about. And if they do tell us what to worry about, we do. But if they don't mention it, we don't. How simple it is, isn't it? Behavioral psychology. Bernays must be laughing his head off, wherever he is. This is during a Commons debate. Ms. Flint confessed she had not read all of Despised Charter. Critics said it was an extraordinary admission to make. Mark Francois, the Tory Europe spokesman, said, it's not every day that someone will admit they haven't read the most important document for their job. And that's true, because I'm sure he wouldn't either. He wouldn't mention it at all. But this is the farce of modern-day politics, you see. Utter farce. It was like when Bush told the politicians in the Congress, he says, to pass the Patriot Bill, but don't read it. It would be unpatriotic to read it. Or anything in it. And of course, it had a whole host of rules and regulations, laws in it. And only a few of them bothered to, I think it's 2 or 3, bothered to even open it and look at it. But they passed laws that hamstring us, tie us up, and truss us up, are not even read by the guys who vote on it, who are paid so handsomely, to say the least. Back with more after the following messages. Through the Matrix. I thought let that guitar wail for a bit because I like that bit. It's very appropriate for what I'm talking about. A lot of wailing. And it's pretty, there was not more wailing going on. The Soviet Union used to use collective punishment. Now remember, this system we're going under, that the big think tanks, like the CFR and the foundations of CFR, are using, and the one they actually admire and said they would use, same with the Club of Rome, is collectivism. That's the Soviet system. The Soviet system would give you collective punishment. In other words, if one person across the country did something with a knife, it'd ban all knives to be carried in the streets, or firearms, or anything else. That's how it's done, you see. And they have so many laws on the books, you see, from local up to the federal level, that you couldn't pass a day without committing some crime that you were completely unaware of. There are that many crimes on the books. And it's the same here now. It's the same across the Western world. The US, Canada, it's all the same. If they want you, they'll find something. And here's an article that sums this up, at least at the stage we're at today. It's actually worse for many people. It depends what they charge you with. And to preface this, people should look at the movie by Kafka. It's called The Trial. It's a realistic movie about being charged with something where you're not told what you're charged with, and all the farce that you have to go through, try and get off with it. This is from mycitylimits.org. I think it's from New York. It's called The Criminalization of Everyday Life. Are anyone's days entirely free of offenses that can get you arrested? By Robert Neuwirth. Robert Neuwirth is an author himself. He's written quite a few books. And he says, I spent 24 hours in the slammer the other day. My crime, well, the police couldn't tell me when they locked me up. The prosecutor and judge couldn't either when I was arraigned the following day. I found out for myself when I researched the matter a few days after being released. You have to find out yourself, you see, if they released you. I had been cited for walking my dog off the leash once, 6 years ago. It says here, welcome to the ugly underside of the zero-tolerance era. where insignificant rule violations get inflated into criminal infractions.